Good morning, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Finance Committee for ReGen Monterey. It's June 5th, and it is 9:00. So I'll call this meeting to order. Roll call, please. Director Riley? Here. Vice Chair Peak?
Here.
Director McKee?
Here.
All right, move on to public communications. And do we have anyone else online besides Director McKee? We do, yeah. Okay, so I'll open this up for any public communications. Anyone who would like to speak can raise their hand on Zoom. There's none? No. Okay, great. I'll close public communications. Move on to 4A, approve the May 1st, 2024 committee meeting minutes.
So.
All right, I'll go ahead and I'll second that. Do we have any discussion on this item? All right, let's do a roll call vote, Anna, for this item.
Yes.
Vice Chair Peak?
Aye.
Chair? Yes. All right, great. We'll move on to the presentation of the budget fiscal year 2024-25.
Thank you, Chair. At this point, we're gonna have Garth go over the overview and any changes or modifications to the drafts that have been presented to the board at this time. Thank you.
So this is the sort of final review of the fiscal 25 budget. And we've looked at pretty much all these numbers in previous board and committee meetings. Just the highlights, disposal fees increasing about 9.2%. MRF revenues expected to increase, combination of slightly higher volumes and continuing to have strong commodity prices. And about 11% increase in the revenue over the fiscal 24 budget and 19 or 20% over the fiscal 23 actuals. Employment costs are increasing primarily due to labor negotiations and new labor contracts, increased health insurance premiums, increased workers' comp premiums, and general employee step increases during the year. Non-salary expenses are expected to go up about 19%. A few items in there that stick out are the environmental costs and the recycling costs. Those are the biggest items. And net income is expecting to increase about 6% from the fiscal 24 budget. However, expected to decrease from the fiscal 23 actual. Here's our revenue mix, which is pretty consistent with what our actuals have been. Disposal revenues making up 76% of the total, followed by MRF revenue, which includes product sales, CRV, refunds from the state, and other power sales, and then some other small items. Our salary and benefit costs, which are our biggest expense far and away. The biggest chunk of that is the salaries, followed by our health insurance, and then followed by the CalPERS costs. So we have a 7% increase in fiscal 25 premiums for health insurance over 24. And workers' comp, we're not going to have any change to our modification rating, so that is not going to adversely impact the workers' comp premiums. And there's a slight increase in headcount, expected to go from 134 to 138 fiscal 25. Capital spending, here's kind of the highlights, the big items that are in the works for fiscal 25. We've got the Mod 7 development, $7.5 million. We have compost site, $4 million. The M1W power connection, $2.5 million. So the total capital improvement expense, or not expense, but spending for fiscal 25 is 21.2 on our mobile equipment. We've got a couple of big items. We've got a wheel loader. We've got some electric forklifts. We got a water truck. So they're about 4.3 million in total. Now this page is significant from the standpoint that it kind of reflects what our cash is doing over the next 5 years. And so if you look at our ending total cash at the end of 23, we were about 48 million. And the first highlighted yellow line there, and if you look across the fiscal 25 budget, you'll see that number drops down to $32 million, and that's primarily driven by the capital spending that we're planning in fiscal 25. And then going down the page, we have a couple of designated cash balances and some restricted cash balances, which serve to reduce our available cash to spend, if you will. So at the end of 25, we're probably looking at about 15 million. And actually, there's probably going to be a change to the beginning 24 number, or the ending 24 number rather. Instead of 47 million, that number is probably going to go down by about 5 million when the final budget packet is distributed, because that reflects better where we actually are through the first 10 months of fiscal 24. Doesn't affect the operating results at all. The operating results will, stay as they are. And it won't affect the budget operating results for next year either. It's just kind of what the cash is. So looking across, you see that, each year the cash balance goes down, and then the bottom line shows what our unrestricted cash balance is. And in fiscal 25, that shows we'll have about 60 million, and that number is probably going to be closer to 10 million of unrestricted cash. And then that number continues to go down, and by fiscal 28, we may have no unrestricted cash based on what our operating plan is and what our capital spending plan is, and it's based just on the reserves that we have today. This is just our capital reserve, our cash operating reserve, and then our other post-closure and environmental impairment funds. This is not take into account or consider adding any other reserves for things like CalPERS or closure costs. So by fiscal 28, it almost is saying, we're probably not going to have any unrestricted cash. So there's probably some action that's going to need to be taken in the next 3 or 4 years or 2 or 3 years regarding cash. And some of that's going to be operations related. But there's other factors that are going to have to be looked at as well. So that was the main purpose of the screen, was just to show what our cash balance is doing over the next 5 years. And that's a quick summary of the fiscal 25 budget. Any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thank you, Ernest. I have none. Thank you. I am really happy about the employees you're adding. I feel like those are really smart choices to make in terms of efficiencies, and it looks like they're really needed. So I was happy to read about those. No, thank you for the report.
You're welcome.
So I thank you for the work, and I know it's not just you, a lot of people. I understand that this upcoming fiscal year has a big capital program over 25 million. But and it's necessary for operations, but I want to focus on the cash over the next few years. And I agree, the organization needs to take some action over the next couple of years. I think, I'm not sure, obviously, we don't know what that is, but these numbers show that we just can't be complacent.
Correct.
And you'd mentioned the 2 things that the board had talked about, and near and dear to me is let's raise the closure or post-closure reserves, so it becomes close, so it starts to move towards reality, because right now $1.5 million is probably ridiculously low, I'm guessing.
It's the minimum requirement. I believe.
The minimum state requirement. And then the other is to talk about the unfunded actuarial liability, which I believe is around 17 million now. And so our CalPERS payment, I just checked, our CalPERS payment towards the unfunded liability is $1.5 million.
Well, it varies. It changes every year.
Yeah, the one that was published
Yeah.
by CalPERS. which is about the average rate at which our unfunded liability is increasing. So even though the payment's 1.5 million, it's not gonna decrease the total liability, at least not for this year. So, yeah, I think the organization needs to hear about unfunded pension liability. I mean, there's 3 options. There's the sort of do nothing case, which is just make the payments that CalPERS requests, which are always behind. Or trust, section 115 trust, or to prepay. But at least have an awareness of that issue and the closure cost. And I don't know, maybe with these finances, maybe the district's not in a position to increase reserves or decrease unfunded liability, but at least, so there is an awareness, this is out there looming, and you know, I've been a strong advocate for increasing costs, or the cost to customers, right? The fees. So the organization doesn't run into trouble, and this is sort of warning.
Yeah,
This
if there's any,
report.
if there's any consolation, on the CalPERS side of it, in conversation with the people from CalPERS, because this question comes up with it in any CalPERS seminar where they kind of review what they're doing and discount rates they're going to use, and people ask, do you work? And they have the same concern we do. They've got this huge unfunded liability out there, and they're wondering, are we doing the right thing here? And basically they say, if your unfunded liability is in a certain percentage range of your total expected costs or something along those lines, then you're okay. They're basically saying, don't worry about it. You guys are going to be fine. You just keep doing what you're doing every year. If you can reduce the unfunded liability, that's great, but you're fine. And we're in that category of, okay, we're fine. We're not in any serious trouble of having a huge unfunded liability and having some major financial impacts down the road. But it would be great if we could reduce it or eliminate it, but
Well,
other things.
yeah, I agree that today, it's not this looming catastrophe, but it's just something to be aware of. And my opinion is that CalPERS has shown that they are a really poor retirement pension plan operator. That we've all signed, all the municipalities and agencies across the state have signed in with CalPERS, but it's a politically run organization, and it's done a poor job. And that's why across the state we're saddled with these unfunded liabilities, because they kept the payments low, right? To ease the pain across the state. They kept the payments low and let the unfunded liability grow. So I don't trust CalPERS. Anyhow, but we listen to them. Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're kind of driving the bus.
Yeah, they are. Well put.
But it's stuck in first gear.
Kim, could I interject?
Yes, please do.
In overview, we start with $25 million in cash, and in 4 or 5 years, our cash goes to zero. And we also have a capital spending in this year, fiscal year, $25 million, happen to be similar number. I don't think we should be putting together a budget that takes our cash position to zero. And we should decide what kind of cash we want to have. Say it's 10 million or whatever the number is. We should give ourselves a provision of some sort saying our capital expending can't be 25 million, it can only be 15 million, or our spending, it has to get reduced we should decide what kind of cash level we want to have, you know, this year, next year, and 5 years from now. And then have a budget that forces us to achieve some kind of cash level, because we just can't take it to zero. We don't have an unlimited source of cash. General
Thank you.
thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Director McKee. Has there ever been talk of a policy such as that? Or
No, no,
Is that excluding the 20% operating reserve? From a balance, are we talking about establishing a separate balance in addition to that 20% operating reserve?
just nearly, what is it, 9?
Because the 20% operating is a requirement for the budget
Okay.
every year. So, I'm not seeking clarification for the proposal, is that 20% supplemental to another minimum balance?
Director McKee, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I can't comment on that. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, the idea that we do have a cash operating reserve that we maintain. So really, we're looking at this unrestricted cash that over this 5-year plan would essentially go to zero. But it doesn't mean that we can't do something between now and then to.
Excuse me, let me just say, we can also go ahead and this year approve a budget with the understanding that we have to achieve some either cost reductions or lower capital expenditures, or give ourselves a task that, you know, if again, we want to have a $10 million level, we need to have a task of $10 million that we're going to take out. And maybe we can't approve it today, don't know the answers today, but maybe we have to challenge management that they, you know, we just can't spend this kind of money without earning more. Either we got to raise fees, reduce costs, or reduce expenditures.
All of the above.
Yeah, I think it is an opportunity for us to look at all the capital improvement projects that are projected under 25 million. And just really take another look at it and see if there is any viability of removing any of those projects. What I see there is still about a 4 or 5 million shortfall from the 21 million there in the list, so we'll get the full list. And staff will go through it and see if there's anything that we can defer.
So.
I mean, go ahead, no, go ahead.
Well, just, you know, an observation to the question about is the operating reserve and capital reserves. And it sounds reasonable to me,
Mhm.
this amount, 20%, right? You said it's 20% of the annual, operating expenditures or
Yes.
expenses,
Yeah,
right?
that's been a requirement for the budget.
Yeah,
That was a board designated funds.
Yes.
And 10 million in capital reserves sounds, you know, sounds reasonable, but maybe that should be looked at. But I think that should be the focus. Obviously, if unrestricted cash goes negative, one of these other numbers are gonna bust. And it's probably gonna be the reserves. So.
Yeah, I think we take all these comments, you know, including Director McKee's proposal that there be a minimum cash level,
mhm,
because that could be separate from these topics,
mhm,
and the staff will discuss and come back to the board.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's just awareness, having more discussion over this, I think is good, so that we know that you're aware. And maybe are willing to work towards a plan for that. Okay, great,
Thank you guys for the feedback.
sure. Any further comments? All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to 4C update on the draft white paper.
So, the principal?
Kim,
Yes?
I do not have the draft, white paper in front of me, so I have not reread it. And so I will defer to you two.
Dr. McKee, there was no draft write-up in the packet. That will be prepared for the board meeting in the board package, so you'll have the write-up, the concepts.
Okay.
And some of the information will be presented in the presentation this morning.
Okay,
Yeah, what you'll see, Director McKee, on the screen is what I have in front of me. Just the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, this is a chance to discuss the updates because a number of comments have been provided to the white paper and wanted to provide an update on the responses or how the responses are being integrated into a revision of the draft. That new version of the draft white paper should be part of the board report for the next board meeting. So you'll get to see a report document. Today, just going to present pieces of the different topics that have been expressed in the comments received to the white paper. So the organization, the white paper is being revised. We're going to add a purpose section to kind of capture the intent of the entirety of the paper. I think one of the components of the purpose is to
I got it.
summarize what's happened at ReGen, board decisions that have led to various contracts existing that have different contract tip fees rates than the actual posted tip fee. Why that came about, how did we get here, what does it mean, what are the benefits, what might be some of the impacts. So those are going to be addressed in the new section 4, specific details of ReGen's business practices. And I'll kind of run through some of those topics in the next few slides. So kind of expanding on what section 4 is going to present. It's going to summarize the guidance that the board gave in the mid-2000s, which was basically hold on tip fee increases, trim expenses, going forward, control expenses, and develop a plan for new revenue sources and the diversity of those revenue sources. So it's basically additional customers and potentially additional lines of business to get new revenues. That was the guidance the board gave in the mid-2000s. Staff at that time came back with a plan in about 2 to 3 years. One of the components of the plan was to sell a portion of the landfill capacity to non-member agencies through regional contracts. And so in 2009, the board was approving 30-year contracts with some agencies in Santa Cruz County, Capitola, Scotts Valley, Watsonville, and the County of Santa Cruz. And as you may know, the County of Santa Cruz does own and operate Buena Vista landfill there in Watsonville. So curious situation that landfill owner was seeking disposal capacity, but nonetheless, those agreements were made. they established rates that were different than the tip-free rates. And staff continue to develop the plan for new revenues and new customers. The leased truck yard became one of the proposals, for the franchise collection hauler. So that started to develop in the 2012 period. Also, a regional contract with Green Waste Recovery for the San Jose MRFs began to be developed. And that too was a limited disposal capacity contract. I think it was originally a 15-year term that did get modified 6 or 7 years ago to end in December 31st of 2036. That too established significantly different rates than the tip fee rates in exchange for that offering that capacity. Other interests of the board is, is the absolute value of the tip fee, the fact that there are differences between the tip fee that's posted and what contract rates are. The impact of that additional disposal quantity, where the disposal revenue is associated with. What's that impact on the landfill capacity and the service life of the landfill? And so those are covered in the summary I'm going to give here. Next, you've all seen this history of the tip fee. ReGen's tip fee has historically been the lowest tip fee in the area. And I do want to call out that this presentation here is only the tip fee value, the disposal tip fee value, one parameter plotted here. Not all agencies collect revenue through tip fees. They have additional means to collect revenue. That's a departure from ReGen, and it can influence the chosen rate of the tip fee. So they can balance where the source of revenue is coming from, be it tip fee or be it from additional fees. But I'd like to call out, the late 90s, early 2000s, where there was no change in tip fee for 6-7 years. Economic conditions were influencing that. Rates, there was an increase there in 2003, 2004, and then again the board, held on, no rate increases. Seek other revenues, control expenses was the messaging. And I'd like to call out the top two rates there for Buena Vista landfill and the city of Santa Cruz. Later on, and we'll be discussing the diversification of revenue, getting additional revenue. Those two agencies are somewhat in a constrained market where they don't have much ability to expand their revenue from outside sources, non-member agencies, so to speak, like ReGen has. That condition is influencing the magnitude of their tip fee rate. So it's basically the opposite scenario as ReGen has. It would be a scenario if ReGen only served its member agencies, that would be the expectation that the rates for serving only member agencies would be at a higher level than the current rate structure. So here's the requested summary of those regional contracts. The 4 contracts in the Santa Cruz County were recently revised. The district ReGen had given them a 5-year notice of termination to cause new contracts to be initiated. So these are the new contracts that resulted in that new contract. There was a stairway on the rates to increase rates annually over time up to a point of 95% of the gate rate. And so this next fiscal year, those contracts will be 95% of the tip fee. That was the strategy for those contracts. The Greenway San Jose contract doesn't quite have that those terms to allow such a thing to occur. It is the biggest source of tonnage and the biggest source of revenue. So this is the one, or the major one of these contracts where financial risk is for ReGen. And that should be a clear message that everyone has recognition of. We staff would like to prepare for December 31st, 2036. To have a plan and potentially be implementing plans that will mitigate the loss of that tonnage and revenue. And then the last contract there is more recent with Waste Connections, called here Waste Solutions Group of San Benito. They are operating John Smith Road landfill and had contracts for the collections with the collection contractor in Gilroy and Morgan Hill. Those Gilroy and Morgan Hill are outside San Benito County, and John Smith Road remaining capacity is less than 15 years, and so they had to close to out of county disposal service, and that's why those tonnages are coming here to ReGen. Small amount, not significant like the green waste recovery contract. Here's a summary of the disposal tonnage associated with those various contracts. You can see, close to 500,000 tons a year cumulative with the green waste recovery tonnage approaching 280,000 or 380,000, excuse me, of that total. So again, the green waste recovery is a significant contract there to pay attention to. From a revenue basis, it's on the order of 15 million cumulative in revenue across those contracts, with about 9 million associated with the green waste recovery. So yeah, a significant amount there. Uh, Here's a presentation in pie chart form of the sources of different revenue. The franchise, $11 million in revenue there is associated with the member agency franchise contracts. And the regional waste is at 19 million is the 15 million I just showed you with those regional contracts. Plus other generators delivering waste outside of the member agencies. So that's the difference there. Again, 9 million of it is at risk, in 2036 associated with that green waste recovery contract. This was shown earlier in the budget presentation, just showing the different sources of revenue. Again, the disposal revenue is a big piece of it, 76% shown here. Again, going back to the board's guidance, they wanted staff to diversify revenue sources. You can see in the table to the right that there has been a downward trend from 2017, where disposal revenue was 87% of revenue, and down to what was forecasted in the fiscal 22 budget at 69%. That actually ended at 64%. So that was probably the low point or maybe I should say the high point of diversification was when the disposal revenue only represented 64%. What's happened since then is there's been some softening in the MRF revenues and in the power sales revenues. So that's kind of offset the trend, but nonetheless, 76% still better than the 87% that it used to be. There was also interest in what was the effect of this additional tonnage on landfill life. And this is 3 different presentations of different scenarios of what that impact might be. The staff looked at regional tons back in 2010 and predicted an increase in regional tons through 2036, coincidentally. They ended up calculating that at this time, they're 2024, there'd be 137 years of remaining capacity. More recently, just now, we developed 2 other scenarios to more kind of bracket what the actual experience has been with these regional contracts. And that's represented by scenario A and scenario B, which have some higher tonnage level assumptions rather, for the period of the regional contracts through 2036. And to more closely align with what actuals have been and might be predicted to be. And those 2 scenarios indicate that as of 2024, there's on the order of 119 to 129 years of remaining capacity in the landfill. This does assume that the green waste recovery contract with the residuals from the San Jose MRFs is terminated in 2036. It's making no assumption that it continues. There was also interest in, the remaining life at other landfills around the area. And this table presents that information. Generally, it's showing, closures, in the 5 to 20 year range, or 5 to 25 year range is where there's gonna be a fairly good number of landfill closures. Which would be a good time to have available landfill space. If you're a business owner. So I'll open it up for questions. That's really wanted to kind of give you the update on those particular topics that were of interest.
Thank you, Guy. Director Speak.
Thank you very much. This is a great document, for all of us to understand the organization, where it's been, where it's going. I wouldn't dwell too much on justifying the decisions made in the past. They are what they are. I can't change them. These contracts, though, are they posted? Last time I looked, I didn't find them.
I don't believe they are.
I don't believe they are.
They are available for public
Request.
request for sure.
I'll raise my transparency flag and
I don't-
say, post the contracts so that the board and anybody can look at them and read them. They're not confidential. They're public documents.
It'd be good if Zoe was here.
Yeah.
Because
Anyhow, just a PDF, throw a link on. I'm assuming that's not too difficult, but that's a recommendation. I would like to know,
Before we move on, there was a request from Director Peak on posting contracts. Is there a concern with posting contracts on our website? What has been your experience around that?
I don't think the concern has come from our department. I think there may be some market concerns around, posting those types of contracts with it, exposes, I guess, business practices.
Wow.
And
we're a public agency.
yeah, Guy may have more information as it relates to this, but
no, it's the situation. It's not been common practice in public agencies, in the waste industry to do that. But it is a public agency,
yeah.
so, it's.
Rob, do you have any legal position on posting contracts and any risk associated with that? And then how would we bring posting contracts to the board to make it more of a item that's been decided by the entirety board?
Yeah, as noted by the director there, those contracts are not confidential.
Yeah.
To post them, when you raise the issue of, is everyone else gonna start looking at their that no one has asked, although they could at any time, to see what are the other contracts besides mine. So it could be done. This just is gonna facilitate their looking at them, I suppose, or the possibility of their wanting to look at them, but there's no particular downside. We'll just have to deal, we would have to deal with the issues that may come out of it. They're not, as I say, they're not confidential, and each one is separately negotiated and they're binding. So that's, I don't know that there's any particular problem that we would avoid by not posting them.
And if I may add, it's not that we haven't had any information about them, because they have been included in board packets.
Yeah.
As they've been approved, so it's not been a lack of transparency per se, because that information has been included along the way. It's just placed in board packets and meetings such as this for the public record, rather than separately on its own webpage.
Which makes it very difficult.
It makes it more difficult to find.
I mean, I would have to go research
Yes.
when those contracts and then go fine, yeah.
You're absolutely correct. Okay.
And go, one more thing, binding. Can we go back to green waste recovery, San Jose? And is there any opening? I'm not to ask the question or get an answer today, but I think this. Where's the rates for that? I think it begs the question, is there some way to renegotiate? Yeah. The green waste recovery, San Jose.
Yeah, they're $30-ish, right? Current fiscal
Yeah.
year, low thirties,
Mhm.
next fiscal
Yeah,
year.
there's no, like a 5-year advance notice to quit, and then that's the handle to start discussing these rates and showing them, hey, this is the real cost. The district is losing money on every ton
We'd have to look at it and say.
that comes in. Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I think it's worth.
This
looking
is,
at.
this is
And-
Peter, this is,
Excuse me,
Director
Director
McKee,
McKee,
just look-
hold on
Uh,
just a minute.
Bill finish.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just, if there doesn't look to be much of an opener, or tiny one, I'd just like start the discussion and tell them, hey, look, this is creating real problems for the district. Let's sit down and figure something that's more,
We can take a look at it.
yeah.
We need to be, we need to be aware, we have a contract with these folks. And we're not gonna be able to, at our that can call, revise it. So it's gonna have to be looked at to see if are there any particular openers that might be available or worth discussing or not. So we'll take a look at that issue.
That'd be great.
Director McKee.
yeah, I think that's a great idea from a standpoint that the contract was negotiated 3 years ago, and so be it, but we're sitting here in a different world. And it's $55 elsewhere or 35, and we're doing 30 and going down to 28. And we do have a contract, but we can also go sit and talk to them and say, the real world is we got to do something different here. And we can do a longer term relationship with you. We can do various things, but I think a discussion at this point would be very important. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Guy.
Yeah, thank you for your support on that, Director McKee. This was a contract from 2013. A more recent amendment was just to extend the term. The actual rates were unchanged.
Well, yeah, well, that so be it, but from a standpoint, I think at least we have an opportunity to go chat and bring it up, and because as we say, if we can't do something, we got to do something, and so and this
We'll
is
get
significant.
the agreement first, I think is appropriate, and then we'll see if there's a trend to pursue. I wouldn't want to enter into discussions if we're not prepared for the result of it, and that could be the loss of the volume.
No.
And if we're not prepared to move into that direction at that point, then we can build ourselves in mayhem before 2036. So the goal is to achieve, to be prepared with revenue diversification by 2036. So I just want to bring awareness to the 3 directors that are in the room, is that if we move in pre-concept without having a concept or a plan in place, we definitely hurt ourselves with losing that revenue prematurely and not being ready to make moves with our own operation to either downsize, consolidate, streamline, and become a more member inclusive agency, where the price is now, instead of $77 a ton, maybe it's $125 a ton. But where we can substantiate the revenues and the sustainability of the organization's revenues, and then livelihood for the 120 some years that we have of livelihood. But
And just to bring everyone back to this general circumstance of why these regional contracts were brought in, it was to get that additional revenue. And for the green waste contract that we're talking about in 2013, it was a finance saver, so to speak. It really helped ReGen continue to provide the level of service it had and to develop improvements to some of the infrastructure. So it allowed for the bonds to be approved at the magnitudes they were approved, which led to MRF 2.0 with the new dual stream recycling facility and for the franchise truck yard. So it is interrelated. This is a unique functional service site that you don't find much in the industry. And we have a breadth of capital infrastructure here and services that are being delivered for the benefit of the public. Other agencies on the tip fee chart don't provide that to the level that ReGen does.
It does excite me though to acknowledge that we do have that agreement that is a not favorable pricing for us, so we're acknowledging that now. But to Bill's point, it's a decision that's been made. What are the decisions we're gonna make moving forward that change that course or that pathway? So it's what we're working on. It just cautious us on how fast we can move green waste out of that non-preferable without impacting us today. Preparing ourselves a plan. There's some other items on the agenda that will come up, and you'll already start seeing the trick. We were very intentful at the informational workshop. And then in some of the dialogues of building this budget is, we know it exists. And how are we gonna continue to ready ourselves for that off-ramping of them and, or maybe not, maybe it is the discussion and coming to us, but we've had a discussion with them with some of their cover ADC that they were bringing to us. If they're not getting the preferred price, they don't want to bring it to us, and they demonstrated to us in that one action. So we've already made the attempt to have discussions with them around volume, so they hit their limit. As soon as they went into tier 2 pricing, they stopped bringing us ADC. So that's my caution with just being ready and prepared with diversifying our revenues, whether it's with them or with someone else. But I'd be happy to enter the discussions as we prepare our strategy to be prepared on our end. And I've been very intentful around this item, and I'm very excited to hear of board members really starting to see us having to take a trek and being forced to take a trek, or face the result as it arrives and go into a very, very high spend panic of how do we downsize our organization to fit the revenue that's coming in now at that point. So I really appreciate your guys' attention to the budget and the agreements around it. The draft white paper is what is designated for that, for all new onboarding people can see that timeline of history. And now we're here where we're having to rewrite our pathway to that ending of 2036 to get past it. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. So I'm excited with the awareness around it and the feedback of how important it is and the urgency to go out and do something. And we're here in 2024. This is 12 years away. But the urgency already exists, and not only in the staff, but also now in the leadership and the guiding leadership that we have within our organization. So I appreciate it. Yeah.
Do we know for sure that we're gonna lose that contract in 2036?
Well, I know that if it was still at $30 a ton, and it was the existing board that we have today, that we may get some kickback on charging $30 a ton.
Yes.
To continue that business. So
Yes.
there is no.
So they haven't told us?
No,
Okay.
I think I take the position of what I've heard in 2024. And I forward it all the way to 2036 that I'm hearing from the board is that it's not favorable. We'd like to be closer to what everybody else is paying on the tip fee. But and then you look further strategy, right? And this is where David Ramirez is gonna help us with the 20-year master plan. is you see all these landfills on, guys, going out of business landfills in 20-25 years. These are all within our area. These are all other organizations that are gonna face the reality that we faced 100 years ago. We may learn from the experiences of these guys closing down and what is the alternative to landfilling in your own county or in your own area. These folks will have to have a plan to either ship material out, have a transfer station for current infrastructure of collections. You have a collection system that will go collect in an area, they have to drop it off somewhere and it has to wind up at a permanent location. How many are dropping off? Like 12 in the next 25 years, all in our area. To Guy's point, we are gonna be in the market of having landfill space, and it may be at a much more preferred pricing than what we talked about hypothetically could happen in the future is we're charging members 77 for the whole gamut. For all the gamut of services, we may charge someone from outside in the future more than that 77, and it's still a designated one portion of our operation, either in the recycling or in the other area, but we have to see what's happening and the technology that comes along with it, plus controlling our spend to try to keep up with everything that's going on. So we're gonna have to figure out very quickly what's important for us in our DNA as an organization.
Yeah. Well, I really like these additions to the white paper. I think this is making it a document that is just contributes so much more to our understanding and to our conversations that we need to have. So yeah, and I think it's super interesting that we have, I didn't realize we have so many landfills near us that will be closing within this sort of period of time. And I think that, you know, all the more reason for us to have our policies, our discussions in place. Whether we post the contracts online that says, all right, 95% of, you know, our tip fee or not, I don't know. Anyway, so I think this is great. Thank you for these updates. I don't have any questions, comments, so I think we'll move on to, we need to go to 4D, discuss compost operations agreements.
So this is just for the compost agreement, today is more an opportunity for discussion. The agreement is not currently ready for distribution. I hope to have that as part of the board meeting packet. But the general situation remains the same. The activity is a transfer of ownership of the permit from Keith Day Company to ReGen. And the establishment for that exchange of permit of a 15-year operating agreement to continue to conduct the composting operations here at ReGen. As you may recall, Keith Day composting began in the late 80s at ReGen. And Keith Day Company came into play in 2009 after a venture capital buyout of the prior composter kind of failed as a business. And so Keith Day Company stepped in. They've been active business in the county for several decades and are known to be a highly reliable service provider and having the highest quality of organic compost. They do operate 2 other sites, not all are composting, but nonetheless, this is an ownership exchange endeavor. And having the long-term operating contract is in the interest of both parties because the operator can be making capital investments that they would be reluctant to want a year-to-year agreement. At the same time, there's security and surety to the public agency that this service, as owner of the permit, becoming the public agency owner of the permit, gives security and surety to the public that those services can continue no matter who the operator is. So, that's what the staff report and the agreement will be speaking to when it's delivered to you.
Thank you, Guy. So this hasn't changed at all since the last time we talked about it. How is it going in terms of the permit transfer to ReGen? What's the timeline on that?
It's about 60 days. We are
So soon. We'll have
yeah,
it completed.
we need to make the formal submittal. But it's an administrative change that's not anticipated to have any alternate decisions.
Mhm. Good. Comments from the directors?
What's the payment? Thank you for the report. What's the lease payment per year? Or what's the terms of the lease payment?
So there are processing rates in the current lease. And there's a nominal lease payment. It's $2,000 or something like that. The land lease part is small, but the compensation is through a processing fee. And that's at
Net positive,
$5.
500,000,
We charge
45 a ton, and I think we get 45.
Yeah.
Yes, is that right? It's been a while since we touched all the details, but roughly it's around, so gate rate is 45. He processes it and charges us 37. We get net revenue per ton, $7 per ton.
Yeah.
So when Garth and I had this discussion the other day, when he talks about the day as being an expense on the expense line on his monthly report, it's okay that he's an expense because he's net positive expense.
Thank you for that explanation. So the reason I'm bringing it up is just as time goes on, there's that escalation of the costs. So we're not trapped into the cost or the lease payment for 15 years.
That's correct. There'll
There's a
be
mechanism.
a rate change mechanism, rate review mechanisms.
And that happens frequently.
So we would anticipate that if there's a request for a rate review or a rate change, that we get the opportunity to investigate and see what are the parameters that are happening within the operation on why we would approve an increase to that rate for keep date. Which means that it's gonna move in on our net revenue position. So we want to be part of that process where we acknowledge it. So if we're gonna go to the cast, we need to kind of forecast what that operational expense increase or decrease is going to be so that we can reflect it in the cost of the agreement.
And so there'll be, a annual CPI term, for base rate adjustments. And then any specific requests for a rate adjustment would have to go through a rate review process. And that would be those capital investment type scenarios.
And this lease includes that scenarios that can be called by either party.
Yes,
Yes,
Okay, gotcha. I mean, CPI is fine, but I'm worried
extraordinary.
about things that are not anticipated, that we're not locked into. Low expense, sounds like, good, thanks.
And just to correct, the rate for yard trimmings and wood is $47 a ton, not 45, and with a $10 minimum, which is gonna be increasing to 15. And the food scrap for commercial is 64 a ton, also $15 minimum.
And who sets that fee?
We do our board.
Great. Director McKee? Do you have any-
Not this time.
Okay,
those were the proposed new fiscal year rates,
Yes,
not current rates.
correct.
and as we adjust our rates, Keith Day doesn't change, I mean, we don't go through a change with, like, so are we essentially making more money off of that material?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's only when there's gonna be like like say you have to buy a big piece of equipment.
Mm,
And he says like, you know, I think some of the onus is on you, that's where we would come and sit
I see.
and really look at, okay, what is happening right now, what is the impact going to be, and do we agree with it or not?
mhm,
Do we even want them to bring that piece of equipment in
mm,
on our behalf of the type of service that we're gonna be providing?
mhm,
We wanna analyze it, is it front end stuff where
mhm,
it's processing the material, or is it back end stuff that may belong to him
mhm,
after the product is created?
mhm.
And if I may, this is part of the reason why keeping the food scraps and organics from residential or really clean is important,
Mm.
because you know, if we were to, for example, allow bags as a part of that system, that would be something that would have to be hand-picked, and increase cost.
Yes. Yep.
That was an example of when we started SB 1383, there was a discussion around the rates that they was charging
Mhm.
ReGen for processing, and there was a discussion of there's increased labor, increased time for picking out
Mhm.
some of the contamination. That was an example where we came to the table and discussed a rate adjustment.
All right, great, thank you. All right, let's go on to 40, discuss biochar pilot program.
Sure, we wanna bring up that, year one of the pilot program is approaching us quickly. And so we will be bringing, this item to the board with, recommendation on extending the agreement. At the next board meeting. This is just an update real quick that contract is coming to expiration.
And so we'll see that this month.
Yes,
Yeah, we are waiting some information packet from Citos Group that's been requested to kind of summarize the performance and achievements during the year. And assess that relative to, does it meet the scope of the pilot study? And, you know, is there a basis for extending the pilot study for one or both parties?
So it'll just be an extension of the pilot program. It's not like they want to increase what they're doing or.
we will be
change.
asking those questions as they, return some of the initial information we had. We have questions around scalability, what did they learn?
Mhm,
What is gonna happen in year two? So
mhm.
we've asked all these questions, we're waiting for a response, and that'll help us bring our recommendation to the board at the minimum.
Mhm, great. Any other comments from the directors? Oh, okay, thank you. All right, before I discuss San Benito County potential service needs.
So, precursor,
Say that again.
We've moved on to 4F. Director McKee discussed the San Benito County potential service needs.
Thank you.
so this is opportunity for us. Will be a request that we bring to the board to allow the general manager and staff to enter into discussions with San Benito on the potential needs that they may have for landfilling in the future. You did see it in your agreement. There is some tons that are coming here as a result of San Benito trying to identify what pathway they're gonna pursue. You know, they have a couple of options, but I would like to get the finance committee support to go into the board to allow me to have discussions with them about what the need is and then report back to the board what that staff, what their staff need may be, or the county need may be. And present that to the board to allow us to pursue, some future avenues around, exactly what we talked about, maybe diversifying our revenue stream and creating a partnership where, the agreements, cost may be favorable to the district. And makes future sense to help us with the 2036 objective of, off ramping unfavorable, pricing and agreements for the organization. So this is just a request to allow us to have some, discussions directly with, San Benito County staff on what the need may be, or any of the haulers that are working in that area on what it would look like, in their eyes, and then we can come back and share that with them.
Good
Sounds
idea.
like a good idea.
All right.
Yeah.
Shall I give a short summary of the situation that's influencing this?
Sure,
So.
we've got
this-
15 minutes.
I'll try to make it 5.
All right,
So this is the John Smith Road landfill in Hollister, which serves San Benito County. That is operated by Waste Connections, you know, we're under contract from the JPA to operate the landfill facility. Waste Connections pursued that contract because they were interested in bringing out of county materials for disposal to that landfill. That's where their revenue source comes from, in addition to the operating contract revenue. However, John Smith Road landfill no longer has 15 years of disposal capacity for the San Benito County tonnage. And that there's a state policy that requires each county to have identified at least 15 years of disposal capacity for their residents. And the landfill did not have 15 years of capacity only because of the amount of out of county waste coming in. You know, it has 1,000 ton per day permit limit of receiving materials. 800, 750 to 800 of that was from out of county. So the in-county piece is small, and so by terminating out of county waste, the landfill now has more than 15 years for its, or it's around 15 years, still around 15 years. I'll take that back. But anyway, the county is looking for a solution for their materials. We're getting Waste Connection materials from Gilroy and Morgan Hill as a result of that termination of out of county waste. In addition, the county is looking for what they might do with their waste, with their recyclables, and with their yard debris. So they're doing some planning around that. They have interest to talk to us about one or more of those services, certainly the disposal service. And that's kind of the background, why we're here for that topic.
Yeah, and we've heard, you know, through contacts and networks, their level of interest is rising at a rapid rate. So they're trying to get a grip on what their plan is going to look like. So we feel it's a great time. We've vested in the board and the discussions and made intentionally awareness around 2036 unfavorable agreement. I think we're all on board. Now the window has opened for, you know, solving that piece of 2036. It's a portion of it. It wouldn't resolve the full piece of it, but getting the pricing right, I think it's going to be appropriate for us at this time.
And San Benito County's interest is high because the expansion that was being planned, Waste Connections was pursuing on behalf of the county. That expansion proposal was denied. There wasn't public support for it. So the EIR is not getting certified, and Waste Connections publicly indicated they're not going to contest the denial. So it puts the responsibility back on the JPA, San Benito County JPA, to, plan a solution for their own needs.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. All right, General Manager Communications.
Sure. Just a few, today staff attended the SWANA Western Regional Symposium Conference. And you'll get a little update on the findings at that conference. Staff from the maintenance department participated in the Advanced Clean Transportation Conference held in Las Vegas. The conference centered around zero emission vehicles, also known as ZEV, ZEV, and strategies for complying with forthcoming fleet regulations. That's really important for us as we start registering vehicles. We're getting asked if we're part of a zero emissions vehicle program. And so we're starting to look heavily into it. And what does that look like for us in the future with our infrastructure? Being on site and in one central area, we have a good opportunity to go electrical if we, because we don't have to travel 500 miles to get to the next charging station or 200 miles. We could essentially run or operate for several hours, but we gotta recognize that the vehicles are ready to perform that type of work. So we're looking into it now. Eric Palmer, part of our outreach and education team. So he attended the annual conference with the California Association of Public Information Officials in May. The conference gathers government communications from across the state to share best practices, latest trends in communications. Eric was elected and introduced as the conference as a social media chair for the association's board of directors. So our staff is now participating in what we're doing here, sharing knowledgeability around social media platforms and the intentfulness around communication. So we're super excited that our staff is going out and sharing and learning from others as well, and building a network with others. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Just to comment, thank you for that. The city of Pacific Grove has had a hard time converting over to electrical vehicles. For example, 2 years ago, the city was buying a new fire truck, and there was one company, I think it's in Germany, that sells electric fire trucks. And so we didn't want to be the first agency in North America to go with this new technology. But even other like police vehicles and other utility trucks, there's been the staff has come back and said that it's not practical. So anyhow, just FYI.
No, and I think you're exactly right. We have to make sure it is practical in the operations that we're running. You can't really accept something lesser or less performing. It may have a small taper drop off, but it has to have the benefit on the backside. It has to be somewhat compatible. So we'll be looking at all those aspects. We appreciate the feedback.
Yes, and disappointing. We wanted to go there, but
The same issue came up at PBCSD with regard to their CAL FIRE components. The report from CAL FIRE was that there's no truck, none of the electrical vehicles are up to snuff of what they're needed for fire situations.
And we just need to go zero emissions, or is it,
It's a program. So where you can, you could, and then there is some time deadlines for the state compliance as well. So we just want to be aware of it.
Yeah, good, okay. Any future agenda items we'd like to see, directors? No? Okay. All right, meeting adjourned. We'll see you on July 3rd.